Good afternoon, everyone. Today's lecture is by Hiroto Kobayashi, a Japanese architect, on Indigenous Architecture with Agile Technology. Hiroto Kobayashi studied architecture and urban design at Kyoto University and the Harvard Graduate School of Design. He received a Doctor of Design degree from the GST. He's worked with Nikken, Sekkei, and Norman Foster and Partners as an architect. He's a founding partner of Kobayashi Maki Design Workshop since 2003. He also represents Skidmore, Owings, and Merrill LLP in Japan. He was a visiting associate professor at MIT in 2001 and 2002, and a visiting scholar at the Center for Japan Studies at UC Berkeley in 2012 and 2013. His projects include work for cities and communities domestically and abroad. Most recently, he has been developing a self-built methodology using plywood and studying a new method of inheriting sustainable community. We welcome you at the KRVIA and look forward to your talk.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wonderful introduction. Hello, everybody. I'm Hiroto. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm honored to be invited to give you a lecture.
Can you hold it closer?
Yeah. Thank you. And then I especially thanks for the announcement in pinkish, and then so now because this is my first time actually in India, and last night I just arrived at the airport, and then how can I get to the hotel? I don't know, but then was my travel started. It's very, very nice to see you, and I was surprised that so many people were waiting for me. Right, and then even if my talk is boring, you guys cannot get out. Okay. Today, we would like to talk about Keio a little bit, my university, and also my projects we are doing with my staff and also students, which is a new sort of idea about building a building. So title is Indigenous Architecture with Agile Technology. So always architecture you are now studying, and you have studied from scratch, from the very basic things. And in the end, you can build a high-rise building, and working with many people, many engineers, many designers, many sociologists and archaeologists and everybody, right? But then the distance between you and an architecture becoming further and further. And at the end, of course, the building is completed. Then at that time, you will be very, very happy. But at the same time, you felt or you feel the distance. So that was my problem. That is my problem. So I try to sort of make the distance closer and then shorter. That is my purpose to do a project maybe. Okay. First, I would like to introduce my university, Keio. Keio is the oldest institution in Japan, only just 160 years. So compared with some university, very young. And he's a founder, and he actually introduced the Western culture to Japan, Yukichi Fukuzawa. And we admire him very much, and only he is the teacher in the university. Other faculties and students are all students. Right. That is a sort of concept. And now he is very famous because this is the biggest field in Japan. So now you can find this space. He's a good educator. So actually, I'm very impressed by his writings. So Keio is very open to everything, and especially our campus, Shonan Fujisawa campus, SFC, is our campus here. Quite open to the world. So we set this new campus as a sort of a global gateway of our Keio. And then this campus was designed by Hiroto Maki in 1990, so 27 years passed, and still 27 years. But now we are sort of constructing a new extension here, which is, actually today I did not show this one because there are so many slides, but so-called Student Built Campus, SBC. Our student design our campus building and then construct the building by ourselves, made in wood. Just only one story. That's why it's possible, right? So very exciting because the students really can be involved in designing and constructing the building. Okay, so this is Maki's design, very modern and a lot of green space. It's very nice. So we have Faculty of Environment and Information Studies and the Faculty of Policy Management and Graduate School of Media and Analytics. And then our field, my field is environmental design. So, thank you. Urbanism or ICT or global collaboration. And this is me. And some innovative implementation. Also, I would like to introduce myself that I have been involved in, maybe you can see, sorry, I just, yes, this is Commerzbank in Frankfurt. I was involved in designing this building under Norman Foster. It was a very exciting project. And this is Tokyo-based Nikken Sekkei. It's like a big design firm like SOM in Japan. And I worked for this firm 8 years, and it's Izumi Garden I was involved in. Or Tokyo Midtown was designed by SOM. I'm representing SOM in Japan, so I have been involved in this project. Or our firm designed some like 10-story tenant building in Akasaka, hexagon. So these buildings are very exciting. As I told you that the many people involved in this one, and then design together. So collaboration is very important. But at the same time, because of this sort of complexity, we have to do, not everything, but we have to do some part of the projects. And then if you are responsible for that part, and then you sort of cover other parts, maybe there is no problem. But these days, some people just think that, okay, this is my work, and from here, your work. So I'm not interested in that part. That kind of attitude makes a big problem for this project. For example, in the case of Japan, like this high-rise residential, the biggest developer and then the biggest contractor, they worked. But then they forgot to make a sort of a hole for electricity in the beam. And then they finished the construction. Then after that, they found that, oh, there's no hole. And there's a big problem. And they decided to dismantle all the building together. And then more like $60 million they lost. It's not financial, sorry. Well, I didn't have any. Okay. So my sort of problem is that complication of the project and also sort of irresponsible attitude to the architecture. That's why I would like to promote more like a smaller project, and then you guys can be really involved in that project and commit to that project. That is a very interesting part and very important part for me. So our firm also designed a small, like a wooden house like this, which is a weekend house. And one guy bought the land, and then they found that the best location of the house, there are many trees standing here. And then they think that maybe they can cut this tree and then put the house there. But then we just discussed with him and that the reason why they come here is to really appreciate the nature, right? So why don't we just protect these trees? So idea is to live with the tree. So here's the tree penetrating here. And then like a plan is a big complex because of the tree, but really we appreciate the tree. So living with nature, which is very important in Japan. Okay, 6 years ago, we had a big earthquake. It's northeast Japan. More than 20,000 people died or missing still. And it's a big, big disaster. And that time, architects tried to sort of help out people there. But then there are many criticisms about architects, because usually architects, they got the commission and then start to design and then supervise the construction and then finish it and then give the building to the clients. Basically, that's it. A year later, they come back and then check. but then they need help more, even after completion or before design. So our team started to be involved in this sort of community, and then try to sort of understand their help, their need, then try to sort of do some, create a new building system to match their sort of expectation. But at the same time, in Japan, some way of understanding of destruction is, there is some idea. This is Ise Shrine. It's one of the oldest shrines in Japan. And then Ise Shrine, very interestingly, they put new building here, and then construct this new building, and then keep this one for 20 years. The meanwhile, there's a vacant land here. But then, after 20 years, they replace, this one. Then they put the new building next to it, they built, and then dismantle this one. And then keep this space open for 20 years. So every 20 years, this building's moved from here to here, and here, and here. But then, design-wise, exactly the same. The technology process, all the same, more than 1,400 years. But the building material changes every 20 years, right? So this is a sort of way of thinking of sustainability in Japan. The materiality itself is renewed, right? But then the concept or technique or ideas all conveyed every 20 years. So we can keep that kind of spirit for 1,000 years, right? So this is a sort of a new way of destruction. So we call like a creative destruction. So we appreciate this idea. And then we think that, oh, only 20 years and a waste of, a material like wood, right? But then after dismantle this one, these material can be used for another shrine for 20 years. And then after 20 years, dismantle again, and then reuse in another place, right, in Japan. So total 60 years, we use this material. And meanwhile, we plant a new tree, and it grows like 60 years. And then almost the same size. That's why we can have a sort of sustainable, natural system we use. So it's very ecological. So we do not hesitate to sort of dismantle or disassemble things if we can use this space for now. So Veneer House is the name of the project. You know Veneer? Have you ever heard of Veneer? Okay. Veneer is a sort of a sheet, and you peel the wood, and then you can have like a 2 millimeter thick or 3 millimeter thick, very thin sheet of wood. And then you compile the sheet and then make plank. Right? That's plank. Then the beauty of that one is we use wood, which is actually thinner, because these trees are cut for thinning mountains to grow other trees. So it's relatively cheap, and then usually, in the case of Japan, we do not use this younger tree because it costs a lot to pull down from the mountain, right? So, but then we started to think that if we can use this one for better use, then plywood or like KRVIA, laminated veneer lumber, basically the same system. So we use this one. It's relatively cheaper and it's very good for the earth, right? At the same time, if we can introduce a self-built system, which is very helpful, especially for the case of disastrous situation, because in the case of Tohoku, Northeast Japan, we couldn't get any carpenter. When we decided to build one community house, we waited for half a year, but nobody came because all occupied. Okay? So we decided to make some new system which you can build by yourself. If so, you don't need professional carpenter. So self-built system is very helpful for that situation. Then if we can use digital fabrication technology, that will be also very helpful. Usually it takes like forever to cut this one by hand. And then you need some technique. That's why like apprentices, under the carpenter, they just train for 5 years, 7 years, to do this. But if you learn how to use this machine half day, and then they basically can cut the similar way. So technology also we do not deny. We would like to introduce new technology, especially digital fabrication technology. But most importantly, my point is that shouldn't get closer. Sorry, where's the microphone? Okay, there's a microphone. The speaker here. I should be careful. Then, because of that sort of heartbreaking thing, we would like to reconnect people of the society. That's why if the building process become that kind of moment, that would be fantastic. So we decided to use this moment to reconnect, reunite, community, Israeli community. That is another purpose. So we introduced some system to connect, wood. One is, cutting a notch like this, and then insert the boards, and then make columns or like beams. Another way is to use wedge to insert, and then fix the joint. So it's a very actually traditional wooden joinery. So we learn from the old wisdom, then we introduce, in sort of with new technology. The first project is happening about 6 years ago, and it's a community house, 100 square meters, and we didn't have money, so we held a big party set up at Tokyo, and one night 900 people gathered, and then finally we got $9,000 one day. That was the biggest money I got in a day in my life. That's very nice. And students worked very hard within a very cold winter. Do you have snow here? No, right? You should experience this one. Every weekend I went there, and then frozen. And then we lost the sense of fingers, and both fingers, the foot and then hands. But they work very hard, and basically we do not use so much machine. Just one crane we use to put this big beam. So I can show you some process. Maybe you can understand how to make this. So these are the cut, pre-cut plywood, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces all connected. This is the lower beam, and all this project all cut by hand. That's why some discrepancy, and then you cannot put it easily. But on the top of the wooden foundation, we put all the structure there, and then connect with the other beams. Then we put some floors, and even, and this is the actual photo where my students worked on this. And we also made doors, from plywood, and then put some deck, and then put some roof and insulation in it. So this is the final day. It took about 2 months to finish this one with students, and this is the last day, so they are so exhausted, but they are very happy. I couldn't believe that this situation is really unbelievable, and our work. Okay, every weekend we go by night bus, and Friday nights, and then coming back Sunday nights. We usually don't do that, but the situation there is much worse. You cannot go there. So we are very glad to work there with local people and try to make a now new community house for them. So we are very proud of my students. I'm very proud of my students, and they are very proud of themselves. So involvement, commitment is very important. So this is interior. Then, because of the project, one NPO, Architecture for Humanity, which is actually American-based, NPO, contacted us, and then they asked us to build another community house near there. So, which is a fisherman's gathering space. So we decided to ask a fisherman this time to build this building, because once you can build by yourself, that would be better, of course. The students can build, yes, that's a good education. But then, if we build and then give it to the users, actually they do not appreciate so much. Of course, they appreciate it, right? But then, if you can be involved, users can. This is one-to-one model. So they understand how to do it. It's easy. So they really were involved in construction. This is 2 weeks work, 40 square meters. Then we put the local bamboo woven material, because this type of hybrid is very important. The structure part, basically, we don't have to touch after we finish the construction. But then finish. You have to change every maybe 7 years, 8 years, but we cannot be there. That's why we have to use, we should use a local material. Then they can maintain by themselves. And then we can also make a local building, local light building we can build. So this is the boy. He every day came to the site. He didn't work at all, but he just played. That's fine. Already he was in this project, right? And then even before the opening, he just occupied this window. And this is, he's saying, you know, this is mine. This is very important for kids. If, you know, he cannot get some place at home, he every day comes here and then he just occupies this window. And this is mine. You know, making some own space, his own space is very important. That's what I learned from this project. This is interior. This is something like watermelon. And opening day, more than 50 or 60 people gathered, and then we decided to take photo. And this is the balcony. And then we didn't expect this much, this many on this balcony. So I was very worried about the structure. Very worried. We can't, of course we calculated, but not this many. And then can you see? It's bending here. Right? So I was here, and then first I stepped on, but then, oh, no, I shouldn't. And then just stepped back. But the next day, everybody's gone and returned, you know, just straight here. That's wood, you know, very flexible. Right? So it's very important. It doesn't break just all of a sudden, like very slowly. So wood is very flexible, and then you can nail, you can cut by hand. But if you use steel or concrete, you cannot do that. Right? So in that sense, also wood is a very good material. In the Philippines, 3 years ago, they had a big earthquake and then hurricane. So we went there, and then we luckily found a fab lab there, which was actually founded by a Japanese organization. Also, my colleague of Merrill University helped to set this one there. But, then we used this machine. These are 2 master students there, and cut everything. So these are the layouts. We tried not to make waste that much. So these are pretty good. Okay? But here, some leftover piece here. So we decided to make furniture using this triangle piece. Then these are the joints, right? So this is a regular joinery. So we use a wedge here, right? Then we do workshop again. This is younger now, 3 years old. So this is a daycare center. That's why the users are much younger, right? So, but we do. So we use the same system and then make a pen stand, and then they make it. So they sort of understood. And then we have some explanation about, they are so serious. It's very nice. They are so serious. And they understood, definitely, 3 years old. Right? So it's important for kids really understand how to build a building. Then we start to construct like this. This is the elementary school kids, and this is the actual part of the building. Then this is, you can see, it's about 40 square meters, and many people, you know, came here and helped. So it took 2 days to complete the structure part in plywood. But we put the substructure on the top of that to put this bamboo finish. Right? But it took 7 days to put that substructure because we have to cut. Right? So structure part we design and we pre-cut. That's why only 2 days for construction. But then local material we use, and then more than 7 days we do. So it's pity because we try to sort of make it shorter and then make it more compact. That's why we found that we have to think more about the interface between the local technology and our technology. That actually we found. And then also, you know, now it looks very local. Then I'm very happy with this because we use a local material and then local people's sort of knowledge. That is very important to exchange, you know, understand, exchange knowledge, students, our Japanese side, and then local people. Not just one way. One way doesn't last long. So always we need exchange in every way. Okay? So this is the interior, and it's a sort of a mixture of This is local plywood. And then Philippines plywood is quite good. Then also we use wood and bamboo. And you can see these furniture, because it's the triangle shape, so we could make a sort of a fan shape. And then we eventually found that maybe we can make like a roundish furniture because of that. And my students and local kids, friend. So this is very local. But then local people said that it's pity because we wanted to have a Japanese architecture, much modern. But then I said that, no, this is good because it's more like melting into that culture, right? And I'm very proud of this. And then a friend of mine kindly visited this building to see this building, right, from Japan. And then he couldn't first find it. He just passed this because he couldn't find. This is very local. Then I'm again very proud of that. But he finally found this one and then see it. And then that's why locality or like, again, indigenous culture in terms of architecture is very important. So I would like to make a sort of a good hybrid between our technology and our local technology. Okay. Once there's an earthquake, these days we get some sort of contact from a local architect. And then, in this case, Nepal, as you know, 2 years ago, they had a big earthquake. So this is the Doraka. Then it's a sort of near the epicenter of the second earthquake. And the situation like this, made in concrete and then brick. But then, unfortunately, the structure on the ground floor is very weak. Usually we put the structure wall on the ground floor, but actually they don't have. That's why from the second floor, basically no problem. But then ground floor broke. That's why these buildings doesn't work at all after that. Right? So they cannot sleep in this building. And then our first plan was to pre-cut in Japan, the plywood of Japan, and then design everything in plywood, and then make a package, and then pre-cut and then put it into the container and then ship it to Nepal. That was my plan, our plan. Then in the 20-feet container, we could put 7 houses because it's very compact. Right? So we can provide 7 houses at once with small container. But then we found that the border between India and then Nepal that time was closed. I think maybe with some political problems, right, 2 years ago. So nothing just passed past the border. Nothing could pass. Then also the situation like this, very hilly, and then the streets are very narrow, and the road are very dangerous. So we gave up the idea of sending our material. But instead, we found a local plywood company, and then they make plywood by hand and quite good quality. They have community forest. So they kindly offer us to use that factory to cut our pieces and then assemble. So we use this space and then work with local people. And this time, basically, we cut by hand. Right? So we go back to that original and the very basic style. But once these guys, like 3 people, work from the beginning to the end, so they know how to build this one. So our idea is basically to sort of convey our ideas, how to build a building. Then they can build by themselves. They can spread that kind of technology, technique for other people. We started to assemble this one, and then we complete the assemble. But this one, no nail yet, just assemble. And then we put the old addresses, all the piece, then dismantle, and then move to the site, and then reassemble. So this is the 3rd day of the site. So we assemble within 3 days, and then we put the finish this one. This is 24 square meters house. So it's a model house. Now 1 family is living here. So made in wood. Maybe this is the first wooden building in Doraka in the States. So our sort of intention is to make a small 3 bedrooms with plywood, with shelves. This is the partition. So it's a very small house, but we are very glad that one family is now living, and he's a journalist and he can report us housing. The beauty is that they use stone or brick or concrete. It's very heavy. But in terms of earthquake, heavy architecture actually isn't so safe. The light architecture like this, it's much strong in terms of against the seismic load. So go back to Japan, and we designed a beach house for one beach, which was washed away 6 years ago by tsunami. And they wanted to reopen the beach. That's why we provided a stage for the concert, and then kiosks for selling beverages. And last year, at the beginning of July, I got a phone call, and they would like to have a thing like this. So we started to design. We cut we asked the manufacturer to cut the pieces and then construct. Finished on July 29th. So from design to the finish, about 3 weeks and a half. That was the fastest. It was crazy. And we were so tired, and the students so exhausted. But then we completed this this system. But to do that, we had to sort of invent a new joinery system, which doesn't have a knot here. The usual, like a joinery system, you have to have a knot here, right? But this one, because of the peg here, and then this stops in the middle of the board here, like this, then we can make a flush finish. So because of that, we can put the membrane on the top of that. If you have a knot like this, we cannot put that membrane. So that's why this flush joint works pretty well for this type of building. And then the beauty of this building is that, for example, like our first building, we had more than 100 kinds of pieces. And we made so many mistakes because they're very similar. Okay? And then we just asked 6 square meters, but then only 6 kinds of pieces make this building. So it's very simple. So if you can provide these pieces, you can just replace by, if some part is damaged, you can replace by these pieces. So you can just cut some pieces and then keep it stock in a warehouse. So here is the one, because you can repeat these, and then you can repeat these. So repetition really makes things very simple. And then put the membrane on the top of that, and then make a stage. So here's the crazy day that they are enjoying, concerts. So it's a very happy moment because after 6 years, finally they could reopen the beach. And students also, high school students, assembled the kiosk there, and then they really enjoyed. And these students came back this year too, and then they built more. So like we have total 11 kiosks, and then selling things. So high school students also are welcome to be involved in this project. After this, one guy contacted us, and then he said that in the fall, people in summer actually in beach we have summer houses only for summer, like for 2 months. But then when they disassemble the beach house, the carpenters throw all the nails to the beach, right, and then go back. Right? So the tons of nails you can find in the fall, and it's very dangerous. That's why one NPO who is cleaning the beach asked us to design that non-nail cleaning house. So if we do not use nail or screw, of course it's safer. Right? So this is a non-nail beach house. But again, about 100 square meters, but no nail. We use bolted nuts, but then we didn't use any screw or nail. So it's safer. And again, we could work together with kids, and then again use that sort of a wedge joint. And they are very helpful. This is a reward. Then small house inside, and this one dismantled last week. So next year, summer, the beginning of summer, they assemble again, and then keep it for two months, and then dismantle again. So it keeps maybe 4 or 5 years. And then, fortunately, this beach is the venue for the Olympic Games 2020 in Japan for yachting. So this can be a sort of a building which can be seen on TV. We went to Croatia just last year to make this one, which is the only wooden building in this island. And because my sort of idea is that, as you know, in Europe, now they have a lot of immigrants from South, right? From Africa, from Syria. But then they have problems with providing houses for them. Right. So idea is to provide a very simple temporary refugees house, an immigrant's house. This time, Milano Politecnico helped us. That's why they provided plywood for us. So we used the plywood, and then we moved to Slovenia graduates. Actually, we found the CNC router there. And then we sent the data from Japan. And then cut here. The pre-cut the graduates, and all the cut pieces we just brought into the site. This, right? So if you can have like a camp here, a refugee camp, and then if you can find the CNC router close to the site, if so, we can send the data there, and then plywood basically you can get anywhere in the world. So you can cut there, and then bring into the site, then with manual. If so, people really can build their houses by themselves. That is our idea. So this is our trial, and here's the CNC router. And then we cut, and then we provided the house. So here's a very small 16 square tea house. The mayor wanted to introduce some Japanese culture, and he's the judo player. Croatia is very, very strong in judo. And so he wanted to introduce some Japanese culture. So our intention is to provide a sort of a prototype of a small house, and then we made this one into a tea house. This is a structure, but eventually we had a tea house like this, and like a paper I brought in, by myself from Japan because we couldn't get the paper there. This is very Japanese sort of tea house. We are providing tea, and then it's very tough. Right. So it's tea house. But this year, because of this project, so many, can you see? So many disasters in the world, and everywhere, every year. And it's a very difficult time now. And not only earthquake, but hurricanes, and Tokyo, for example, we had a big flood this year because of big scale rain. That's really amazing. So really, the climate is changing. So I'm old enough, to just survive. But you guys, be careful, and also be provided, please. So I try to sort of be involved in this type of situation and try to sort of help out, but with some new ideas. This is Kumamoto, southward Japan. Earthquake happened. Then they actually cannot live here, of course, but they cannot leave this house away because all the belongings are here. Right? So they have to stay near here. So our idea is to provide a small house instead of the camping tent. Right? The tent, of course, it works, but it's very hard to stay north. So our idea is to provide a very simple plywood house, which is about 6 square meters, and made of like 18 boards. So here's the one. And this is less than 10 square meters, so we don't need any permission from the government. And also, that's why we put the casters here. Right? This is not architecture. And then the government, well, okay, so you can just use it. So this is a simple one, and 3 people can safely stay here and sleep here. Then another way of using is a bender or like a tea house. So we are now sort of pursuing this direction. A smaller, simple construction Veneer house. This is the second version, which is much simpler, because this one, even like a wedge, we do not use. So we provide a structure here bottom, and then push this wall into the structure, and then put the top structure. Then it's fixed. So here's the the layout, and total 14 sheets, 4 by 8 feet. And here is the manual we provided. So it takes about 45 minutes to construct. You see, first we put the structure here, diagonal, and then put this wall into that structure, and then put the floor here, and then put the ceiling structure here. And then we put the membrane and then tight here. So everything fixed. So it's 14 boards. About, in Japan, the material cost is about $500 US dollars and 45 minutes. So it's very simple. So we are now providing a house like this in Slovenia for the immigrants. And in this case, actually, we are trying to make like a 3 booths, 1, 2, 3, and then 2 are connected, and then 1 separated. We can make a sort of space in between. So here's the 1 to 10 model, and then these are the pieces. So it's very simple, and finishes like this. Again, if you are involved in this type of project, you can feel that, architecture can be much simpler. And of course, you can go to more complex work after that. But at the same time, anytime you can come back to the simplicity. It's like Mac computer. Steve Jobs said that, think different. He wanted to return to that world with a very simple idea. So I would like to sort of think that architecture again, maybe a lot of complexity, many things you have to learn. But then also you can think that simply, very simply, and then try to sort of make your distance between the architecture and you smaller. So we are now building this building in Slovenia, now under construction. This year we decided to build that small refugee house and also community house in Slovenia, graduates. And here is more like a Mies van der Rohe type of, too flat a surface, and then very translucent, transparent space in between. And the system is like this. It's a square, and then 12 columns, and you can have open space inside, like this. So this is the now 4 days ago, and I go back after India. I go back to the sites and work for this project, and will be completed September 16th. Right. So we are now working in several places. Started from, of course, Japan, but then go their places. Then this year go to Accumoli near Amatorice in Italy. They had an earthquake again last year. Then also, even in States, we may have projects because there are many homeless people there. That is another issue. But they need houses. So simple house can be maybe helpful for a lot of people. That's the last. Thank you very much.
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question to ask you. What is the shift been like for you moving from really large projects which you worked on with Norman Foster or Nikken, Sekkei, or later on with SOM? I mean, it's a kind of this kind of big bad world of construction, right? And then you move to a scale which is very kind of intimate and personal almost in some sense. Why this choice to kind of shift to something smaller, and what has that kind of journey been for you to kind of make that shift?
Thank you for asking. Yes, very exciting, working for the big project, and then the impact to the city is very big, and also the community is very big. If it is good, big projects tend to sort of forget people, especially local people, especially indigenous culture. So I believe that architecture should sort of respect the local culture, at least, and the local people. And in the case of earthquake, we found that what the most important thing is the local people's life and then the culture. So we decided to jump into that field. And we tend to think that, okay, I'm doing this, so that part is different part, and I'm not interested in that part. But once you are involved in that part, your world is again, that place is your place again. So you can have both. And then I found that that's very nice because it's totally different sort of context, totally different technology, totally different people. But then we can find some similarity, of course. And then we can find that very simple but very important principles there. So through these projects, I really can find also the beauty of the big project too. So I'm still working with SOM and then doing 2 big projects in Tokyo. But I also bring some idea about local people's, sort of ideas and mentality of culture with SOM. And so this is part of architecture education and understanding. So I think maybe we should do both. That's what I think. Is that a good question? Good answer for you? Yes.
I would like to ask how much is plywood sustainable? Like if we are, and second part of this would be like if we consider that the whole community comes up in this way, then the person who will be building the last would build the most expensive house, or it won't remain any more sustainable then. No, in the sense of that the wood would be so expensive if it is considered that the whole community or a place is built like that. So will it always be like that the one project is always isolated in the community, or can it?
The first question is about durability, of the material. That means how long it lasts, right? How sustainable? Right. Plywood, if it gets wet and then exposed for outside for many years, will be gradually split and then broken. Right? But then if it is covered and also with some finish, oil or like a paint, and it lasts long. In the case of, for example, California, it's quite dry area. The plywood is exposed, but usually they use as a sort of outfit of the building. So in the case of Japan, it's very humid, like here too. So in that case, we have to be careful about the humidity too, and also termites, right? So against termites, we need some chemical stuff to protect the wood. But it's basically the same with regular wood. So I think maybe we tend to think that the plywood doesn't last long, but if we maintain pretty well, it lasts long. But then at least 6 years, I can say, because I made that first one 6 years ago. So I guarantee 6 years. Right. And you said that one community, plywood is sometimes very expensive for them to build. Yeah, it's right.
As a whole, if we build together with it, then it is very more expensive to build it. He's saying if you push up, everybody builds with plywood, the demand for plywood will go up, and then suddenly become expensive, it won't remain cheap.
Right, okay. Good thing. In the case of Japan, plywood is actually cheaper material, but in case of Congo, for example, it's quite expensive because still like a developing. And then industrial material like plywood is so expensive. So it's not easy to just say that. For me, I cannot say that, okay, you use plywood, it's cheaper. Right? It's wrong. Right? That's why we have to think how to provide material. That's the first thing. And then, but at the same time, compared with other material, plywood is quite universal. Then everywhere basically in the world you can get. When you can find a concrete building, you usually use plywood to pour concrete. So the plywood is a sort of a building material, but cannot be used as a structure or like a finish. But our idea is to use it for the structure because you can build by yourself, right? And you can reduce the labor at the site. For example, in the case of the United States, we are now planning to make one house in the States, and they said that the labor cost the highest now in the States. That's why minimize the site construction period, which reduce a lot of money. That's why prefabricated house is very preferred. So our idea is to pre-cut everything in the factory and then take it to the site and assemble it in 2-3 days, done. If so, it's much easier and then cheaper. So these days, developed countries, the labor, how to reduce the labor cost. That's the issue. Right? And at the same time, we have to be careful about the use of wood to make plywood. For example, in the Philippines, we're accused, Japanese, because Japanese company entered some 20 years ago and cut everything, and then take it back to Japan, right? So the people there are still like, are you Japanese? And are you cutting our trees? And then now they are having a sustainable system, planting, right? So it's better. So I talked with the governor of Bohol Island, and he said, I was worried about if he doesn't like the idea. And he said, no, this is ecological and then sustainable. That's why we can try to use wood in good way. So it's all, of course, based on, it's depending on the situation in the country and also industrial market. Right? So this is not the sort of final solution, but then this is, I think, maybe one of the solutions.
How do you convince people to help you build these structures?
Actually, if you construct this building, assemble this building in front of somebody, naturally they will join because it seems fun. It's like we call plastic model. We make a plane, or when boys usually make. Plastic model is already all set, pre-cut, and then assemble and then make a model. Right? That's a sort of plastic model in Japan, and it's fun. So assemblage is much easier than cutting and then adjusting and then nailing with many tools. That's why simpler but more fun, I think. That's why not so. Are you not interested in joining? What's the problem
So it was a pleasure to see the work, and I think what you answered Pinkish's question, it's important to do both the kind of architecture there and this. But I think your systems in Japan have enabled that because you also teach and you have something called a laboratory system through which you operate. And I think because as all students here, what's the incentive, like he said, what keeps them going, but also they need an incentive to build beyond learning, whether it's part of academics. So do the students get credits for things like that, or what's your system there that enables this? If you could enlighten us a little bit more on that.
Yes, I'm teaching at the university, so students, I know that the students need credits. And that's why I set summer program, and it's sort of a 1+ unit. In the case of Japan, 2 units. And but this year, actually, I didn't, so they complained. But I believe that this type of experience is, priceless. You cannot compare with the credits. This is an experience. So once you are involved in this type of experience, you cannot forget, and then you would like to come back again. Right? So this is actually so many people, but then our students is about 8. And then Louisiana University students have like 5. But others are all high school students. This is the local industrial high school in Louisiana in Slovenia. And they join to assemble this building. So they don't have any credit. But they join maybe once per week. But they may be very happy to do that. So then, yes, so I think maybe we should think more about how to provide more credits to students, which is maybe better for school too. Yeah, good suggestion. Thank you.
So So, plywood as a material, like how much time, like in places like Nepal where you said that's the only plywood material, like how much time did it take for the community to accept that plywood as a material for them, because that's the first time for them?
Yeah.
And even plywood won't work for all the climatic conditions. So did you get proposals, or did you get invitation to build somewhere where you thought that plywood won't work and you didn't build these things there? So like how do you think of an alternate material that can be used instead of plywood?
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, we have a culture of building on architecture in wood, right? That's why Japanese are easy to understand. Yes, of course you can do that. The problem is that plywood, that cheap material, finish, unbelievable. You know? We need some cloth or we need some mortar on the top of that, right? That's the problem in Japan. But I love the surface of the wood. That's why I try to sort of explain to Japanese people that this is beautiful. You know? Change your mind. Think different. But yeah, you're right. In the case of Nepal, so hard to sort of persuade people that this is safer. And maybe this is cheaper than some concrete buildings, you know, compared with the high end. Right? So it takes time. That's why indigenous culture, to understand indigenous culture is very important, to really understand what they need and what they can accept. Right? But in the case of earthquake, in the case of big sort of movement of the people, the situation is a bit different. That's why I think maybe we can provide this system, and then if somebody thinks better than this in terms of this, right? So that type of understanding is very important. Right? So this is one chance, and then, as you said, it is not so easy to really persuade people that this is better than this situation. But at least some presence of the building there is very important to understand. Images, pictures, and everything is fine, but then the real building is actually the strongest sort of media. Maybe heat resistant. Microphone is very far, so could you just scream?
Yeah. So
Actually, I just wanted to ask you regarding most of these houses, were they temporary structures or were they built to last long? And if so, service provision, like what are the kinds of services you have laid out or have provided for, in terms of electricity or even as basic as toilet in the project?
So your question is that to make this building last long, what kind of service we provide? Is the question? Or what's the question?
Services.
Okay. Services are sort of additional sort of facility, electricity and sewage. Okay. Yes. In this building, we didn't provide. Yes, we provided electricity. It's easy, just line, right? But then sewage and then fresh water, we did the first building. Yes, we did, but it costs a lot. So usually we provide a sort of a common restrooms and then kitchens outside. And then we provide houses only for sleeping, basically. So that's the easiest one. So we are now planning to provide 10 houses for Ecuador, and then we are now planning to provide one community space, including community room that provide a kitchen, community kitchen, and community bathrooms. And in the case of camping area, like a refugee campus, usually we cannot provide each house, each bathroom. That's why we basically provide a common space like that. If we would like to build a personal independent house, we need to do that. So in the case of the States, maybe we'll have to think that sort of a unit, to implement, to put it into the main house. That might be a solution.
Looking at Japan as a country, it's one of the most dense country in the world, and you tackle one of the major issues of earthquake by building this structure. But can you address how the number of the people inhabiting in this space? Can you increase the number of the people, like going G+1 story or G+2 story? do you have some modules, or are you working on some modules on that?
In the case of Tokyo, actually, so many people in that area. Tokyo area, 30 million people are living in Tokyo area. It's quarter of the population of Japan. It's very dense. And of course, we are worried about the next big earthquake, which may happen within 30 years. So I feel very worried, about myself too. Right? Then, because it's dense, usually we tend to build like a multi-floor residential, and that type of building, which I showed first, is actually very sustainable, very actually safe. Seismic load and everything calculated. And in the case of Northeast Japan earthquake, there is a Sendai city, is one of the biggest cities there, and then no building was broken, nothing. But then the biggest disaster happens because of the tsunami. And then the short, coast area, people just die because of the tsunami and the houses are washed away. Right? So in the case of Tokyo, there are many high-rise buildings, high-rise residentials. That part basically safe, we believe. But then lower houses, especially not the center, but then sort of perimeter area, there are many wooden first-story or two-story houses remain there. It's old, just after the war, so maybe 50, 60 years old. It's very vulnerable. So once we have a fire there, it's a big problem. So we are now thinking how to protect those people's life. That's the issue. And made in wood. So we introduced some non-flammable wood technology to protect them, or to put the firewall in between houses. That type of things we are now thinking. But of course, if we can rebuild, replace that building, old building by new one, that's possible. But we do not recommend to do so, because once you destroy those houses, maybe community will be destroyed easily. That's why we try to sort of maintain the community, at the same time how to sort of make the situation safer. And we are now thinking. But that, maybe the density, I don't know, Mumbai and Tokyo, similar. It's very dense in a sense. Tokyo wants to answer?
Question of
Yes.
have you explored
Yeah.
multiple stories
In the same situation? Yes, yes.
Same technology.
Right. Same technology, yes. I think maybe I can show, I don't know if I can find quickly, but for example, this is our portfolio, and I think maybe you can see, I'm sorry, okay, not this one. We actually designing some buildings, like a multi-story building, and which is yes, it's very nice if we can build the building in wood. And in the case of Japan, we have some regulation that if you have 2-hour fire rated wood, you can build a 14-story building. Right? So we designed 40-story building at some points, and I just not looking for that one, but I don't know. I don't know if I can find this. Anyway, yeah, maybe later I can show you, but that is possible. And now we have that kind of non-flammable wood technology, which is very new. About 10 years ago, one architect actually invented. So with that technology, we can introduce wood buildings, even in the center part of Tokyo, which actually we can pursue. So I talked with Kengo Kuma, the architect, and he is very good at using wood, in a sense, right? So we discussed that maybe for the Olympic Games, maybe athlete camp, maybe we can build a wood building, and then we agreed, yes, we should do that. And then he got the big commission, and we forget that part. I'm so disappointed. Anyway, okay. Thank you very much. Yes.
In the very beginning, you mentioned that after practicing for such larger firms, you found that there is a very large distance between the architecture and the architect. And in this side of practice, through these kind of projects, is this one biggest factor that once you involve the user in building of the building, does that shorten the distance much more? Or what are the other factors that you found that shorten the distance between the architecture and the architect? Can you elaborate more on that?
For example, compared with the United States, Japanese people tend to think that architecture, building a house, is to be built by carpenter, professional carpenter. So we do not touch, and then we think that it is impossible to touch, the building parts. Right? But in the case of the United States, they do it by themselves, self-built, and like Home Depot is a big, DIY, do-it-yourself shop there. You can buy everything, and then even professional people go there and buy toilets and basin and everything, right? So I think maybe compared with the Japanese people tend to think that it's impossible to touch, right? How about India? I don't know. You think that you can build building by yourself? Not so much, right? So because you think that we need some technology and then tools and techniques to build the buildings, money, right? Yes, but if you build a very small one and with very simple technology and very simple material, if so you can do that, then your sort of notion about architecture or building architecture is changing. That's what I expect. So my intention is to make it simple. Then try people experience that process. Without experience, it's very important. They're very impossible. It's yes, I understand, but actually you do not understand that because through your body, you really understand. This is another important issue. I'm teaching an embodiment design program. Embodiment design is that you have to do things by yourself using body. We tend to think that only by brain, and then these days internet provides everything for you about knowledge, right? So you just, okay, I understand, but actually you do not understand. Once you are involved in things by using your body, then you really understand. That's very important. So, 200 years. In this case, intentionally, every 20 years, they decide. That's why it's so easy to understand, right? So, because of the materiality, we have to change. But we are not sort of sticking to that sort of preservation about the material itself, the thing itself. We do not sort of obsessed by using the same thing. But even the thing itself, entity change is fine, right? But then spirits or the technology or technique or ideas should have been kept or should be kept. That's what we are thinking. So that's the difference of the Western type of thing, way of thinking about architecture and Japanese way of thinking. So we are sort of flexible in a sense because we can, we just forget this one, after 20 years, right? But then we keep this one, the same thing here, different, totally different thing, but then exactly the same idea. That's very Japanese. So, you understand what I'm talking about?
Not so easy. Maybe you can explain some, some architects.
No, I think we'll have to get into a more philosophical discussion about Ise Shrine and the philosophy of getting it rebuilt 20 years. So I think we'll need to read up more for sure. All right, I think thank you very much, Hiroto-san. This was really very interesting and humbling actually, and I'm sure by next year we can get a dot on India too, and we hope we can work together on some project, and I'm sure not only students, a lot of architects will be interested in joining you. So let's look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much.